Tuesday, April 16th, 2024 Reset Conversation, which is Creating Rituals and Ceremonies with All of Creation by Sister Robin Merrill. This is a production of the Reset Center of Southwest Florida, and Reset is an acronym for Restorative, Ecological, Social, and Economic Transformation, which we look forward to in all of Southwest Florida. Sister Robin has a pretty full schedule for the time that we have, so we would like you to put your questions in the chat as you listen to her, and we will try to get questions answered at the end of her presentation. There are a couple people that I would like to recognize, and that is Holly Rahn has been a long time board member and co-founder of Reset. Joe Venezia is also long-term board member and co-founder. We also have Graham Scott, who is our treasurer. And I'd also like to acknowledge Houston Cypress, Reverend Houston Cypress from Miccosukee tribe of Florida. And he has been very involved in the program that we have done that is being a good neighbor. And you can see things about that program on our website, which is SWFL Reset. Sister Robin Merrill is an artist and spent 15 years in the Philippines as a Christian missionary doing medium documentaries among the poor and creating economic development projects. She and her husband run a nonprofit cultural organization. Sister Robin has taken vows as a Protestant in 2 different religious orders. One is for Episcopal women. Robin and family live in South Florida for 22 years upon leaving the Philippines for health reasons. Sister Robin has worked with Reverend Houston Cypress and loved the Everglades movement since its inception over a decade ago. And together with Houston, she has felt the freedom to invent and create new and meaningful rituals and ceremonies that speak across cultural and religious barriers. In this talk, she will show and explain some of these personal rituals she has created. We hope that the talk will spur on your own spiritual creativity in the universe. And with that, Sister Robin, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
And welcome.
Hello. I'm really glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for those that have shown up. I want to jump right in and talk about different ceremonies and rituals that I've created. And as was mentioned in the introduction, I have felt a freedom to be able to do so with my friendship and camaraderie with Houston Cypress and my involvement with Love the Everglades movement. So together as artists, we've just kind of invented something. So I think I'm like probably polar opposite with Houston. So it's been a lot of learning for me. When I came here to from the Philippines, I wasn't expecting to be a Floridian or to live here. And as an artist and a designer, and as a missionary, I've been just trained to know what indigenous culture is, learn about the roots of the land, and what's going on spiritually, and to see how you can be a part of that. And so I was very curious about what the tribes and tribal art and design was and is in Florida. And that is how I got to know Houston and work with Love the Everglades movement. for about 10 years now. What I had to do was to allow myself permission to be able to do things. And what I found out real quickly in South Florida is that people don't, number one, they don't protest well. and they don't like to be very demonstrative. So I would start by talking about the prayer walks that I've been doing. And you know, in the Philippines, it's largely a Catholic country, and a beautiful thing that they would do, I'm not Roman Catholic, is that the whole community would come together and regularly do processions with candles. And there's just nothing more beautiful than to just, you know, be under the starlight and to watch people sing or chant and just walk with candles, the whole community. So that was just a norm for me. And so when I came here, I was also trained unusually, I think, as a missionary, because I was with an art group and they just really wanted artists who could think more creatively and try to undo a lot of the destruction and be more culturally sensitive as Christians out in the world. And one of the things we were trained to do is prayer walks. So prayer walks around land and around property to listen, and also to pray a blessing for it. This is something I was trained up to do. I didn't really realize that that was not a norm for most people, but it was a norm for me and where I came from. So when I came here to Florida, I just was like, all right, who's doing the prayer walks? And there wasn't anyone doing prayer walks. So I started doing prayer walks. And one of the things I created, oh, actually, there's kind of some samples behind me. They're not lit. I turn them off. But one of the development projects I work with is handmade paper, like organic, gorgeous handmade paper. Those are lamps that are turned off. But I created this with handles and bamboo, what I call candle covers. So they'd sit over a candle and you could hold and carry the candle and walk with it. And so I invented those as like art pieces because I knew that people they don't even like to be pedestrians. It's like people are embarrassed to walk on the street, which is unusual. So I had to figure out all these ways of how do we do a prayer walk with these weird cultural stigmas here in South Florida. So I started inventing things as an artist and as performance art. And I found that just by saying everything I was doing was performance art, I could do it. And it kind of like gave myself permission, but then it also gave people watching and engaging, they would look at it as a different way. Because here in at least in South Florida with Art Basel and all, people did start to understand what performance art is and public performance art. So that is the avenue that I began to take, and to just kind of get myself permission to begin to invent new things spiritually, and also to like bless and heal the land, but also to activate and to listen. So that is one of the things that I really want to just share with you all, is that, you know, to give yourself permission as well, and to figure out a way that you can do what you need to do or that you want to do. I know getting older kind of helps, because when you get older, you're just like, I don't care anymore. I don't care what anyone thinks of me. But if you still do care about what people think about you, just, you know, figure out your path. The other thing I know is language. So language is a big barrier. And one of the things I learned with working with the tribal members here in South Florida is they have a whole different set of words for God. They use the word creator and breath maker. And that is absolutely perfect. And so I use those words, and words can create division or they can create harmony. And there's something that I call Christianese. It's a language, and it is bizarre. It's like there's all this theology that's packed into these words that you have to use and learn if you want to become a Christian or be a part of a church. And it's very barrier creating, and it's rather absurd. I am not an institutionalist when it comes to being a Christian. I'm like a feral Christian, free range, cage free, organic Jesus follower. I understand the need and the role of the church, but and I'm a part of a very traditional church, but I realize that that's not everyone's path as far as procedure. And I work a lot on the street. I always have as a missionary, just kind of grassroots. And there's seekers, people who want to engage spiritually, but quite often I would realize that I can't encourage them or invite them to go to any of the churches I would attend. And why is that? Is because they wanted to get close to God or touched from God. And a church service, one, they'd have to learn Christianese, and two, you're usually handed this roadmap. That's what I call it. I'm sorry to be a downer right now about this, but it's this pamphlet, and it's like, read this, sing this, stand up, sit down, and then, everyone leaves. And it's like, this person just really needed a hug, and they wanted to cry and go maybe to an altar, like a holy place, and to just feel like sacredness. And we created this service, like this roadmap, and it doesn't work, in my opinion. It doesn't work for most people, and I refuse kind of to be a part of that realm. So I am a part of it, though. I lead church tours, and I'm a part of it, but I do things a little bit differently. So language is really important, and the whole goal of language, like I have a whole series of paintings on language that I've done for maybe 2 decades, but the whole point of language is to communicate. And so you want to communicate not to yourself and the people like you, but who are you trying to communicate to? So the goal of communication is whoever it is you're communicating to. And that's why I think it's important to switch up your words and to sometimes learn a new dialect. And the things that I've learned to do as far here in Florida, as far as like ceremony and ritual, in listening to stories from the elders, which I feel very privileged to have gotten to know a number of elders in the tribes, is just old stories of how communication happened to them, how they got to know things through nature, and whether that was the sound of the wind in the trees or what birds were communicating. And that was how certain people escaped at certain times or knew to take cover from storms, these type of things for survival. And I guess over time, I became very impressed by those stories. And I myself would just spend more time in nature and with trees and listening. And I began to see or hear the wind in the trees through the leaves as almost like the pipe organ, or, like it is a language, and it will pick up and it will slow down. And there is a rhythm and a form. And I may not know, and I may never know exactly what's being said. So you all need to be careful. We all need to be careful about, like, oh, God spoke to me. I mean, that's like psychosis, right? So it's like this borderline of you're hearing things from God and from nature, that borderline or that swing of what about just dwelling and being a part, and you're hearing things, but let's just talk about resonance. Just like music, it's a resonance that can be a part of you in a deep subconscious way that you may not have the words to articulate, but it's an important part of us and part of the universe and part of the present moment, the present time. So this is true with wind, water and created order, like the trees, the birds, the plants, all of it. And for us to be a part of it, I think you're all real familiar with grounding and earthing and things like that, and the importance of that, not just for nutrients, but for electricity. I mean, we have so much electricity in us. We're bombarded by electricity we can't see all day long, whether it's Wi-Fi or whatever. And it's really important for us to spend time grounding and a part of the earth, whether you're gardening and using your hands in soil, whether it's walking in the beach, whether it's just holding onto a tree, whether it's holding the leaves of a plant or a shrub or anything. But these things are a really important part of rituals and ceremony, rituals especially, that you can do for yourself. I guess the words ceremony and ritual, as far as Christians, I had to spend years, decades, to just get over and through the fact that we were trained in, like, the evangelical circles that I've been in, that all of that is paganism, animism, things that were evil and wrong. And wow, you know, like, even as a missionary, it took me a long time to unlearn those things or to avoid those things, because I was around people who would think that way. And it's just that careful walk that I've had to take of not being in agreement and to realize what things are healthy for us as human beings on the earth and in a space, and in this beautiful, beautiful order, sacred order that the Creator has placed us in to be a part of. So the thing about trees, that I've spent a lot of time with trees here. The one thing I learned from the Seminole tribe is they have something called the sacred oak, and that's in Hollywood, Florida. And I had never ever heard of this before I came here, but they have it's a council oak rather, and they have their council meetings under this oak tree, that's walled off to the public or fenced off, because that is a very important spot for them. One of the things I learned is that many cultures, a big old tree will be like the city hall. It'll be a place where, you know, like, you'll have trial, because the tree can understand and retain information. And so the tree is a witness. And that is really important. The tree is a witness. And this is true, you know, anywhere and everywhere. But I know that we don't think about that much here. So I'm talking about Western culture, America. Most particularly, I'm in Florida right now. I know not everybody here right today, and I'm giving a shout out to my friend in the Philippines, who's with us today, Zoila. So the trees being a witness, and the trees sharing knowledge through the roots and through the aquifer. Okay, so trees have been known to be able to send information about 20 miles, that's what they reckon, through the aquifer and through underground system of fungi. But they tell each other things. And knowing that, I just began to work with trees. It just came about here in where I'm at, which is just outside of Fort Lauderdale. So just a certain respect to have to trees. And I think I'm going to ask Joe to go ahead and put up some of these photographs, and I'm going to talk through the photos, and then I'll go back to talking, but I'm going to talk through the photos first. Thank you, Joe. So in regard to oops. Is this our number one? Joe, I'm sorry, Joe, can you hear me all
Yep,
right?
sorry, I was on mute and I had to stop sharing. I thought that was number one, but I can go
that's-
to.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted, and then I'll give you a shout out when to turn. So go ahead, you can go ahead and go back to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm having him do the tech because I cannot. Okay, so one of the things that I do is, unfortunately, tree funerals. Because I just feel that, the wanton killing and destruction and of trees is just horrible. And in Fort Lauderdale, this is an artist friend of ours. Her name is Stephanie McMillan, and she creates some really great images. And this is from a most recent massacre that, we had learned about, and we couldn't save, I think I saved one tree just from Harpin, but that wasn't substantial. Basically we stood in and watched the massacre, and they're living and they're breathing, okay, the trees. So there's a biblical verse that says, rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. So to be able to just mourn with them and to share the pain and to acknowledge and thank them for everything that they gave to us, and to say sorry for the way that they're being treated in this dishonoring form of death that occurs with the way they handle trees in the city, which is basically chop them up and throw them into a wood chipper very fast. And they don't try to repurpose the wood at all, because the most expedient thing to do is to throw something in the wood chipper, which is such a waste. But also to just be able to say goodbye and thank you to something before it's destroyed. So we can go to the next one, the next image.
Okay, give me a moment there.
Oh, so this one is also the idea of funeral. So you can go. You're okay.
I'm sorry, where do you want me to go?
You can go back one. There we go. Thank you. So this is a green space in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and I know there's some folks on the call today who are an important part of this. And this was always promised to be a green space. This is where the original Fort Lauderdale City Hall was. It's a chunk of land, and everything around it is now Condo Canyon. So it had always been promised to be a park or an area for the public. And there was kind of a really horrible backroom deal, and people found out that this was all going to get torn down. So again, knowing that people don't like to do prayer walks and all, and I was asked to help coordinate some type of a public event to rally to save this place, what I decided to do is what I called a flower power walk. And so, I'm a child of the 60s. Flower power is peaceful, nonviolent protest. And also I just wanted to use art to like tattoo or brand the place, because they had put up this chain link fence. So I got all this old banners from my husband's school, recycled banners, and asked my husband and my son to paint all these, classic 60s type flowers from the flower power era. And we went and put those up all around, and then it was a protest move where, and fortunately they stayed up for almost a full year, the whole duration of the life of those. But what we did was we did quite a few walks as a community, and walked around the property. And I would say, like for myself, I'm going to be praying, but for anyone else, I just say, cast your vision on the land. What do you want to see for the land? And we also did a tree inventory, and they thought that there was 3 important trees to save, when in fact we counted 106. So, and I'd love to see this become a tree sanctuary where the trees that they're killing in other properties, you know, could be planted here. We can go to the next slide. This one just shows, we also told people to bring flowers, to bring leaves from the trees, whatever they wanted to do as we walked around the property. It did get some good press. And, you know, you don't see this very often. And I encourage everybody to do things like this, because, you know, whether we win or lose, we're going to remember this time we had together. And so will the trees and the wildlife that was in there that came and acknowledged us. We had some really remarkable things happen to us in different times when we were there that were very spiritual. Not all the time, but it happened. And we can go to the next slide. Yeah, that's just showing some of the great interaction with people. We asked people to, you know, write things and hang them on the fence, just different things people wanted to say or do. And we had markers and things like that there. So the other thing I did, and this is just private. Again, I don't really talk about a lot of the stuff that I do that's my own personal ritual. It's just things I get led to do, but to bury things. I'm not going to say what I buried, but I have in my car now what I call a holy hatchet. It's under my car seat. And so, yeah, while it was raining anyways, and the ground was softer, I just prayed about what section of the land I should go to, and, you know, dug a hole and prayed over something and buried it. And that was that. And that was part of what I continue to do, work in that vein of just working with the earth that way. We can move to the next slide. And this is what I wanted to talk about also. This is on that property. The building behind it is no longer on that property. But this tree was just iconic in Fort Lauderdale. It's a dragon blood tree, very rare for Florida. It most likely came from Fairchild Tropical Garden. It's very old, but it's a tree that I used to just say hello to whenever I drove into this part of the city. You know, it was just like, welcome to Fort Lauderdale to me. When I'd pass it by, I'd be like, hi, I'm here. In my mind, not always out loud. And well, slowly this tree started falling apart and dying. And, you know, people called me about it. And I talked with the city arborist, and he's like, yeah, we got to take it down. It's a danger. I said, well, look, he told me why. He said it was infested with termites. And I said, look, you know, we can't just keep cutting down trees and not involving the community. You know, people were online just outraged in grief about this tree and the loss of it, and just fuming mad. And so I said, you know, would you at least at minimum allow us to do like a tree funeral? We don't need a permit. We're just going to be on the public sidewalk. We're not going to blame the city. We just want to say farewell. And they didn't, you know, they just started cutting it down. But I was there. So what I do is when I'm called and led to do it, you know, by the Spirit, I'll be with a tree or the remains of a tree after it's been cut down. There's so much happening now. I can't do this tree funerals full time, you know, it's not like my gig, but I, you know, I'm a little overwhelmed by all the death and destruction. But this one, I started to learn about it. I took pieces of the tree that when it was cut as a stump, and then they laid sod on it. And I began to learn that the dragon blood tree, it has this really dark red resin in the wood, and that wood is used for Stradivarius violins. It's very wonderful wood, and the dye is used as a dye for various things, a very dark red. one day when we were doing our prayer walk and we got to the spot and people were wondering where that tree was, it occurred to me that I was just contemplating and said, you know what? I never saw, oh, this is a secret. We're getting recorded. This is a secret. I never saw them take out the roots. You know how you'd use those stump grinders, you know, and you like, I'm like, I never saw them take out the roots. They just laid sod over it. So I got my hatchet out, and there's a lot of homeless that live here now. So they've kind of gotten used to seeing me come out in a long dress and a hatchet. And I know where these roots are. And so during one of the prayer walks, I said, you know, the roots are all still alive. This tree is still alive under the soil. And it communicates it's still alive in the aquifer, which is real close. The aquifer is right down. And this is right next to City Hall. And so I said to people during one of the prayer walks, you know, I carved a hole and I said, if you want to, I know if it's too weird, please don't feel like you have to do it. But if you want to, just reach down and put your hand around one of the roots and whatever, you know, you want to silently commune with it, you want to talk to it, whatever you want to do, you know, you want to mourn with it, whatever you want to do, but we're all kind of a part of this. There's unseen things that this, you know, this is one of those unseen things. It's alive right below the surface. So we did that. And I go back every now and then to, you know, check on the tree. It's still alive. And just a little note regarding power and earth and water, you know, like, again, there's water right underneath all this. This is the exact spot where you heard about those massive floods a year ago, April, in Fort Lauderdale. City Hall across the street was completely destroyed from water. They have to bulldoze it. This is just me. I feel like, you know, you disrespect the earth, you know, the words I use is, if you punch the earth enough, it's going to punch back. You know, you keep punching, it's going to punch back. I'm not correlating things. I'm just saying it is what it is. It happened, you know. So I just think we need to be very respectful. We could go to the next slide. So this is Leo Jim of the Miccosukee tribe. He's Bird Clan. And I've commissioned him to do canoes from Cypress, which is what they usually carve larger canoes from. And he's never carved a full dugout. He's a young carver. He's never carved a full dugout canoe because the cypress trees simply aren't around and they're not that big anymore. So we came into Florida, the settlers, and just completely ravaged the land and took out the trees to use them for lumber and whatever. But you need a really big cypress tree in order to carve a dugout canoe, because so much of the wood that's usable is in the center, and a lot of it around the edges has to come off. So I had won a grant from the Knight Foundation to help restore, revitalize what I feel is the lost art of canoe carving by Florida tribes. And in my gallery in downtown Fort Lauderdale, we received this grant to have one of the only Florida canoe carvers, Pedro Zepeda, would come and carve the canoe in our gallery in the front window. So it went on for much longer than we expected. So it was about 3 years. So it was very interactive, very educational. People would come and watch. But what I did, I wanted to do for, like, again, ceremony, is have him carve these canoes, which I purchased. And then if you could see here, I have little tiny ones too. And I created these as kind of like this prayer tool, where, you know how they have like worry beads where people would do rosary beads like that. Well, I asked him to carve these for, like, see my thumb in the canoe, like And that puts your oils of your hand on this canoe. And I just like keep these in my purse, a few of them. And I had him sign his name and the date and Bird Clan underneath. So we've been doing this for a number of years now. And what I do is I will use this like maybe as a gift to someone, because this symbolizes to me our journey in life. It's a very Florida thing though too, how water connects all of us, and we're all on a journey. And at certain times our canoes come together and we happen to meet each other or whatever, or do something together. But these are very special to me, and I'll do various things with them as I'm prompted. Sometimes I'll let them out into a waterway, you know, as I've prayed over it or put something in it and just let it go. We do this in the Everglades. Houston and I have done it with larger ones, similar, half the size of what Leo has there, where we've had a live stream. I know Houston and I love the Everglades did. We were live streaming a prayer ritual time with the Standing Rock Lakota Sioux. And we were in the Everglades pouring back some water that had been used for one of Houston's prayer ceremonies with the water. And then after the water went back to the waters, we took one of the canoes and put one of the local water grass flowers and then just set it out and had it live streamed as it floated away. So yeah, it's just a unique little thing that that I'm continuing to do with the local Cypress, and with Cypress coming down, like some of the last of the logs and last of the trees coming down. I try to harvest them and get the logs and get them over to Leroy Heneheho Osceola, who's a carver, and he'll come to the city, get them and take them out to carve so that they're not put in the wood chipper. We can go to the next slide. So this is Pedro, and that is the log that he had to carve in our gallery a few years back. And as you can see, it's not that large, right? But this was a naturally fallen log from Hurricane Wilma. And yeah, he now he's like full-time canoe carver. I thought a new path in life, got real popular. And yeah, so that's Pedro, and we can go to the next slide. I think there's one slide at the very beginning, this one. So this one is, this is a friendship dance so there was like a rally and a protest that I organized to help to save our post office downtown Fort Lauderdale, because the federal government was just like at a certain point just wanting to kill off post office. And ours was like walkable, historic. It started at the trading post, at the Stranahan Trading Post, and then just moved down the street on Las Olas. It was right near my gallery. And I thought, you know, you can't do this to us, one, without a fight, but two, you know, at least we're going to come together and say goodbye. You know, and this is a very important. There's some people who had these PO boxes for 60 years. You know, I mean, this is really old post office, and this post office went up in sales each year. It didn't go down. So it was a nonsensical thing. So I thought to myself, who fights the federal government and wins? Again, remember, people don't protest around here. And I frankly, I was really insulted that people around town were asking me to do something when I'm new. And it's like, you all are very powerful, wealthy, smart, intelligent people. Why aren't you doing something? I'll follow you. Do you do it? And they're not going to do it. So when I thought about who will fight the federal government and win, there in the post office was a picture of the Seminole tribe on their canoes right in the river pulling up. And I'm like, there you go. They fought how many times and they won. They're the only unconquered tribe. So I asked Pedro and Everett there, it's like, would you guys like to do something, this art performance piece, and come up the river in the canoes, and we're going to do this, that, and the other thing? And they're like, okay. So this dance, again, at the time, bringing everybody together, I would tell people, we don't know if this is a funeral or if our rally is going to save it. but we have to do something. And that's all it was, because we had no idea if we could save it or if we were coming together to say goodbye. And this is one of the big things I really want to share with rituals and ceremonies, is because you don't know which way things are going to go. It's not like a magic wand, it's like, but coming together to at least acknowledge like pain, suffering, trauma, and come together to do something. And that's what we were doing here. It was part of the traditional friendship dance, and we won. And we were one of the few post offices that had a reversal, and we saved the post office. So I think those are all the slides I have to show, and I have a few more items before we like open up to some questions and answers. But one of the other things I wanted to mention, that this little canoe that we used for was Anne is on. Anne Gordon Vega was with us when we used this one time for someone's ashes out on Loop Road in the Everglades, and that was completely unexpected. But they were going to drop ashes into the Everglades, and I was about to let one of these out as a memorial. I had more than one, as a memorial for someone I lost, and I had written their name down. And yeah, Gregory, you're right. Holly said it was Gregory. It was Gregory, all right. It was Gregory. And so we put the ashes in the canoe, and then realized the drop down was going to be too deep. So I just scrambled down the side and put it in the water. People are still making fun of me for doing that because the alligator was right there. And I thought, Greg was here all the time, and all those birds and animals know Greg. And we're not here to do anything other than to put his spirit back. They're going to know him. So anyway, I did that. put the ashes out, and they're out there somewhere. But I love doing that, and I love to just be ready. Be ready, and you can do things like that with just about anything. It doesn't have to be a carved canoe, but all of us can have different ideas of how, even if it's just throwing a stick in the water. No. Oh, thank you.
You inspired me to draw a canoe.
Oh, that's so great. One of the things we do on the airboat with, and this will be kind of my last story that I talk about as far as rituals and ceremony with Houston and the Love of the Everglades. We do a lot of Everglades excursions, and I come occasionally. I'm not there on all of them, but I come occasionally, and we created a certain time where we turn the airboat engines off, and we do what I call, I bring a lot of people from the city out, and I want them to connect up with their local water source. So we do something that I call moving at the speed of water. And I just think it's really important that we recalibrate, and anyone anywhere to recalibrate themselves, especially if they live in a city where things are going like what I call on the hamster wheel. Recalibrate yourself with the speed of your local water. So the Everglades is our water source, and we turn on the faucets and we push and we pull it at speeds that are not normal for the water. We put unjust demands on the water. The way we flush our toilets, and we're expecting the water to move at our speed, and it causes harm, especially with overdevelopment. It causes harm because we're not living in nature in harmony with the way that our water flows. So the water is moving down the state of Florida at a certain pace, but the wind will change that pace. It's a constantly changing flow and way of movement. So when we're out there, we turn off the engines. I ask people to be quiet, obviously turn off your phones, and be quiet and listen to the symphony of the swamp, is what I call it. The way that the different things start to bubble or chirp or chime in, the frogs croaking. And then again, just to be quiet and to feel the wind just slowly move the boat. And then there's something I talk about as far as, remember earlier I was telling you about communicating with different words. In the Christian creation story, in Genesis 1:2, it says that the earth, how it was created, is the Hebrew word is ruach, and ruach is breath from the nostrils of God. And so this idea of this wind, and that word is now the word used for the Holy Spirit, which is now, it's, contemporary. But the wind from God went over the surface of the waters to create all of creation as we know it now. So that is a creation story from Christian and Jewish scriptures. And I want people to think about that when we're out there, because we are part of the created order. We're in creation. And at that time, we are all sharing the same breath. Okay, we're sharing the same air during the 10 to 15 minutes that we're being still and silent. And so we're breathing in and we're sharing similar air, and we're just all being a part of creation at that time. So that's one ceremony and ritual which has really resonated and hit well with people. So we continue to do that. And what I do, like when I'm leading the tours at our church, Bethesda by the Sea, it's in Palm Beach, and it's a very old neo-Gothic style church. I lead the tours and I help tell oral histories that have been lost. I was asked to just jump in because the archivist has recently passed and he could see that I had an interest. And what I found out is that church was built on the concept of healing waters, the whole thing. And one of the things that Houston and I in Love the Everglades that we say is water connects us all. Water connects us all. We are all united by water. And in scripture, Jesus refers to himself repeatedly as living water. And out of you will flow rivers of living water when you're connected to that source. And I think that this is a real important way, and those are the words that I use. That's how I refer to Jesus and the creator, is water. And so my whole focus while I'm in Florida is water, because theologically it's sound, so no one can give me trouble in my pack. And I just consistently talk about the flow and water and the refreshing, and water is life. So I'm going to close it up, my part of talking right now, and you all from the Reset team can tell me what we're due regarding questions and answers or anything like that.
Okay. What questions have we got from chat?
No questions in the chat, but people could just maybe raise their hands. They have questions. And if nobody has any, I probably have one. But let y'all go first. Anybody?
Go ahead, Holly.
Okay, well, your language is so beautiful and so intentional. I just love your whole talk so far. I resonate with every word you spoke. It's just beautiful. So thank you. And you were describing what to me is like the interconnectedness of all things. And you used a term that I haven't heard used much. Maybe it is in different Christian groups, but it was let me see, I wrote it down. Created order. I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit more. When you say created order, I get a really good feeling, but I want to understand what that means.
Oh, it's a really big deal with my husband. I'm so glad he's not here, because you would get an hour.
I found the button.
Yeah. So his ideas and concepts have, we've been together for a long time. But he was just asked a week ago to lead a talk at church, and now everybody, they want more. They want part 2, part 3. But it's regarding like sacred geometry and what he calls the divine design, which is also called the divine order. And it shows up all throughout, through science, through the created order. It's the Fibonacci sequence. There's lots of different words for it. Well, he creates all of his artwork based on this rhythm and this pattern. He draws it out before he does a painting. And so he's completely, I can say he's obsessed with it because I'm his wife. Most other people, that would probably be rude, but he is very obsessed with it. But he's figured out a way to talk to people about it in different ways that they can hear it. So for example, with Christians who would think he's like really weird and off the weird side of things with this numerology, they might call it, that kind of stuff. He shows them where it shows up in scripture. So there's a lot of places in scripture, and him and one of our board members did a deep dive to find all that out. So I don't doubt that he'll ever write the book he always wanted to write that shows people that, but we have a few pamphlets and whatnot that we write about. But it does show up because it's an order of strength, it's an order of beauty. And it's I talk about it in our gallery. Our gallery's closed down right now, by the way. Right before COVID, we closed down, and eventually we'll bring it back, but not right now. But I had to learn how to talk really fast about this because people would ask when they would see it. So one of the things about the created order is it's kind of like the chaos theory, but it helps you in chaos. So if you know that there's a rhythm to everything, and there's a rhythm in the universe to everything, then it actually helps you to feel better about when things are off kilter. So this is also a good illustration that I used, that I read in a book once, of when you become off kilter and the sphere or the world is turning around you, but you're off kilter a bit. It's like that washing machine that's going like this, right? And it's really hard to pull yourself back up. And that could be mentally, that could be with depression or whatever. So this idea of staying grounded and connected to the source, whatever you want to consider the source to be, that is extremely important to do when you start to feel unraveled by the world or circumstances or things going on in your life. It's really important for you to just recognize, I'm off kilter because things threw the spin, the things threw me off, and to get yourself grounded and stabilized and to just go back so that the world and the stuff is spinning around you, but you're still like this. I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, that covers a lot of dimensions, from quantum physics to mathematics to science to spiritual reality. And I think our language, as well as our capacity to understand what you're talking about, is evolving right now.
Yes.
Is that we're evolving together in understanding all these great mysteries. Oh, I see a hand up with Michael, so.
Yeah. I actually have a question, but I just want to thank everyone here, and especially Robin, for connecting all of us. But the observation I'm making is I'm a Taoist practitioner, and one of the big concepts in Taoism and in the Tai Chi practice, and the Tai Chi is the spiral, and it's the reminder that there's two sides, the black and the white, the yin and the yang, and it's not a still picture when you see that. It's actually supposed to be moving. And the other aspect of it is we're always reminded to be like water. And when we get into that tilted side, if we remind ourselves we're water, we can right ourselves because we sink. That actually the body doesn't necessarily sink, but the water within the body sinks. And that is effectively grounding, as Robin was talking about earlier. So those are my observations, but this geometry of spiral, it does show up everywhere. You see it in the universe, in the stars, you see it in plants, you see it when you cut a section through the body. And again, it's a big part of the Taoist practice is to move in spirals, not in straight
Mm.
lines, not in a single direction, but almost like spinning or spinning back and forth. And it basically holds you, you're basically using your water or balancing your water. And so this water theme is certainly in my life, and I like hearing about it from this other perspective as well. Thank you.
That's remarkable,
Thank
Michael.
you,
Thank you
Michael.
so much, because I did not know that. And I just want to give a super quick shout out to Michael. Built a whole community garden near where I showed you the photos downtown Fort Lauderdale on a spiral. So he did the Fibonacci spiral, and the whole plantings are like that.
Just
Kat,
to add to that, I want to say is we did that on August 28th in 2020. And within 10 days, we had a storm almost equal to the one we had April 12th last year. For whatever reason, it wasn't quite as remembered, but Andrews Avenue and 3rd Avenue were virtually rivers from Sunrise to Broward. And I was worried about that when I did the spiral. And we had 72 people, including Robin and others, plant a tree in this pattern. And I thought about it. There was this hurricane off of Nicaragua at the time, and I saw this spiral, on the TV, and I realized that's the same spiral. And I'm thinking of, in Tai Chi, these spirals sort of connect and attract. And then sure enough, that storm came right over us. It is very powerful stuff.
Okay, we are getting close
Kat.
to the end of our time, but Kat, you have your hand up, and I will certainly be happy to call on you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sister Robin. It's wonderful to see people linking Christian theology and what those original texts actually said to the same things that I see in Indigenous community. I just love it. Thank you. And when you're talking about balance and moving back into balance, so I spend a lot of time in particular with a Cherokee person talking about balance and that need to balance ourselves, because we have to balance ourselves and be balanced within community in order for the earth to stay in balance. The world, the real world, not the buildings and things that are superimposed upon it. So I love that. The idea of quantum physics time and real time and stories that begin at the end and end at the beginning. So I have a very dear nibbling who I said, well, here's this quantum crystal. It's still kind of hypothetical, but they're going to put it into computers so that the computer can actually time travel, because quantum physicists know that time is not moving a straight line. And that the beginnings and the end meet each other. And of course, what they said was, oh, are you saying that quantum physics is catching up to 20,000-year-old indigenous knowledge? Yeah, that is what I'm saying. Just thank you. I love this. And it is also just, I spend so much time with people that don't talk about the reality in the world that we all inhabit, and yet pretend that we inhabit artifacts and mechanical systems. And we don't always talk about what's real. So it's a gift. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Robin,
Thank you.
thank you ever so much for being here this evening. And I want everybody to know that this presentation will be on the Reset website. And if you just explore the website, you'll see where we have all of our Reset Conversations. And this will be posted shortly. Not exactly sure how long it will take, but we'll make sure that it gets out for everybody. And you can explore all of the Reset Conversations that we've had on that site as well. It's just SWFL reset.org.